Welcome back, DPReview TV viewers. It is Jordan Drake here, filling in for Chris Nichols, who's on vacation right now. But the timing actually worked out really well because so many of you have been asking me to compare the Panasonic GH6 against the Fuji X-H2S. These are both some of the best hybrid mirrorless cameras for shooting video, and they're coming in at a pretty similar price point. So let's go through a whole bunch of categories and hopefully I can help you figure out what'll be the better camera for you. Now remember, for this episode, we're just talking about video features. If you're looking for a capable stills camera as well, no question, the Fujifilm is the way to go there. Panasonic has very limited dynamic range in photo mode, and the Fujifilm stills autofocus is fantastic. So if you're looking for a hybrid camera, that's the way to go. And to mix things up a little bit, as we go through this video, I'm going to be swapping out which camera I'm using, alternating between the GH6 and X-H2S, so keep an eye out for that as well. All right, we've switched over to filming with the Fujifilm, and let's talk about the handling differences on these cameras. Now, both of them have an excellent, very comfortable grip, really nice button layout, the dials feel fantastic on them, but there are some key differences, starting with the Panasonic having more buttons that are optimized for video right out of the box. We've got a button that gives you quick access to an audio menu that I find really useful. We've got a front record button in case you're filming yourself or you have the camera set up in a rig. And I really have to talk about their fully articulating screen implementation, where you can tilt it out from the camera body if you just want to shoot low angle, but then it's fully articulating from that point, so that keeps it away from all of the inputs on the side of the camera body. It works incredibly well. The Fujifilm still has a great handling body. It just feels like it was originally designed primarily as a still camera, and they give you the option to customize a lot of the controls so it still functions well as a video camera. But I do really miss the photo video selector switch that we had on the X-T4 to quickly switch between the two. With this camera, you either have to put it in the movie mode on the dial or set up one of your custom banks to be video optimized. It's not a huge deal breaker, it's just a little bit of a step back. So for that reason, I'm going to give handling and ergonomics to the Panasonic GH6. All right, back on the Panasonic to talk about displays. Now, in terms of the LCDs, they're very similar. Both of these are fully articulating displays. The Panasonic is 1.8 million dots as opposed to the Fujifilm at 1.6 million dots. It is a marginal difference there, but the Panasonic does have that really nice hinge design. If you primarily shoot with the LCD, then that might be the way to go. However, as well as having the fully articulating LCD, the Fujifilm also has a top LCD that you can customize to have a bunch of different camera settings displayed up there. But most importantly is the electronic viewfinder. Now, I use this all the time. Some video shooters use them less, but if you're trying to get critical focus, these are really wonderful tools as they're both sharper than the LCD panels. The Panasonic has 3.69 million dot display, same as the GH5, which is okay, but we found it's quite soft when punching in to check focus. However, the X-H2S has a 5.76 million dot panel, and that is still very sharp when punching in to check focus. I think for most people, the clear winner here is going to be the X-H2S, unless you work exclusively with the flip-out LCD. Back to filming on the Fujifilm to talk about video autofocus performance. And frankly, neither of these cameras are bulletproof. They both have their own weird little quirks. The Panasonic GH6 is an immediate disadvantage because it's using a contrast detection system, which does require moving the focus in and out of focus to confirm where it should be, and that means you are going to get occasional hunting. Now, it's better controlled in the GH6 than on any of the other Panasonic bodies that we've seen so far, and I really like that it gives you the option for a focus limiter in video, so if you're doing something like we are today, I can turn that on and it's not going to focus way off in infinity or on the immediate foreground. The Fujifilm system is very good at detecting faces and eyes, and it has a subject detection system that works with quite a few different like vehicles, animals, things like that. The real drawback to it is it doesn't have any kind of generic tracking where I could tap on, say, a product or an object and have the camera keep on following that, whether the subject moves or the camera moves. That's something I really think they need to implement in the next version. And even if you are using subject detection, face detection, something like that, I've just found that the Fujifilm still can occasionally get confused and flutter off to the background. So it's not a perfect solution, but if I had to pick one and I was shooting autofocus, I would go for the Fujifilm. Back on the Panasonic to talk about assist tools, and Fujifilm have made some strides in recent years. You've got punch-in magnifier and peaking when you're trying to confirm focus. As well, we've got a histogram to meter out our scenes, and I do like that they have an F-Log assist preview, so you can look at a semi-graded image while you're recording instead of the flat image. But Panasonic just brings so much more to the table in this regard. We have all of those features, but also we have waveforms, we have vector scopes for getting your color correct. But also the GH6 gives you the ability to actually load your own LUTs onto the camera. So the preview image you're looking at on the camera can be very, very close to what it's going to look like once you're actually done grading with your own preferred LUTs. This is a huge advantage. I mean, the Panasonic has the best assist tools of any mirrorless camera out there. I don't really think there's any wiggle room. This is the winner of the video assist tools category. Back on the Fujifilm to talk about stabilization, and both of these cameras have in-body image stabilization that can also potentially work with a lens with optical stabilization in it, so they're pretty competitive that way. However, it's the actual look of the motion that I find quite different. I find the Panasonic, if you're walking with the camera, it definitely smooths out a lot of those micro jitters, but still looks quite natural. It just looks like a little bit more controlled handheld footage, where I always find the X-H2S is still kind of fighting you a little bit, has a bit of a jerky look to that walk and talk footage. Now, both of these cameras do have a boost image stabilization mode, where it's really going to fight any kind of movement. So it can make things like pans or walking with the camera incredibly jerky. You'd never want to turn it on for that. But if you're looking for like a locked off tripod look to the shot, it is extremely impressive, and I'd have a tough time calling a winner between these two. But if you plan to move with the camera, the Panasonic gives you better looking footage, so I'm going to give that the win when it comes to image stabilization. Back on the Panasonic, and we're talking about recording formats. Let's start with the GH6. It just has a ton of record options, pages and pages, H.264, H.265, ProRes, All-I, IPB4. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of abbreviations there. But what I do really like is Panasonic gives you generally very useful data rates for the frame rate and codec that you're shooting at. However, the Fujifilm just has endless options in terms of the type of compression that you're using and the data rate in all of those. It means there is almost unlimited flexibility in terms of your record formats, but it also means it can be tough to determine what would be a good data rate for the compression and frame rate that you've selected with those. So I was tempted to give this a tie. However, I will give the edge to Fujifilm because it gives you the option to record ProRes in the LT format, the most efficient of the ProRes options and still quite gradable. I actually use that quite a lot as well. Both of these cameras are going to give you the option to record raw video externally. However, with the GH6, you can only capture ProRes RAW using an Atomos Ninja, where with the Fujifilm, you can record externally ProRes to the Atomos recorders or Blackmagic RAW to the Blackmagic Video Assist. So just a little bit more flexibility in the Fujifilm. I just wish they would streamline the menu options or just say, hey, with your chosen settings, here's the recommended data rate. That would just smooth things out quite a bit. Winner, Fujifilm. All right, we're back on the Fujifilm to talk about probably the biggest category, which is overall image quality. And both Fujifilm and Panasonic brought out some new tricks to improve the image quality on their cameras. Starting with Panasonic, they have the new DR Boost mode, which actually reads out the sensor at 2 different gain levels to give you more information in the highlights and combines those images right in camera. And it really does work. It makes your base ISO 2000 when recording in Vlog with DR Boost mode enabled, but it is giving you considerably more dynamic range than we saw before on the GH5. So it's a huge step forward for micro Four Thirds sensors. Now Fujifilm, because their sensor can read out so fast, for the first time they're allowing you to record F-Log in 14-bit. This has led to them creating F-Log 2, which is capable of capturing more dynamic range. Though interestingly, the F-Log curve seems to be leaving some headroom for a future camera with even more dynamic range, maybe like a GFX. But still, this is the best implementation of F-Log that we've seen. So what is better? Well, I shot this high contrast scene with both cameras clipping at the same point. And what you can see is the dynamic range is quite similar between the two, but in the shadows and midtones, we are getting a cleaner image out of the X-H2S. And while I love Vlog and F-Log too, I find them both very easy to work with, and I actually like the manufacturer's LUTs for that. When I'm recording lower contrast, on the Panasonic, I'll shoot their Like 709 profile. On Fujifilm, I'll shoot the Eterna profile, and I just prefer the look of the Eterna profile looks very film-like, and it still gives you lots of flexibility in the grade. As well, the stacked sensor in the X-H2S gives it better rolling shutter numbers, so you're going to see less of that jello and wobble. The Panasonic, though, definitely might be the camera to pick if you're doing a lot of slow motion recording. When it's recording 4K 120, it's still using the entire sensor width, whereas the X-H2 requires a substantial crop to capture 4K 120. And high frame rate 1080p recording is just much better on the Panasonic camera. So in most situations, I would say the X-H2S is going to give you better image quality, but if you're shooting a ton of slow motion, the GH6 might be the way to go. But overall, I'm going to have to give the win to the Fujifilm. All right, we're back on the Panasonic to talk about battery life, and this is pretty straightforward. The Panasonic GH6 battery life, even though it's switched to a new battery type, is actually a little worse than what we saw with the GH5, GH5S. I find on average I get a little over an hour of record time on one of these batteries, so I'm usually out with 2 to 3 on a full shoot day. Where the Fujifilm X-H2S, I generally find I get over 2 hours of recording. That's with or without the fan attached. The Fujifilm battery is a very similar size, but I'm getting basically double the battery life. That is a clear win for the Fujifilm. Next, let's talk about lenses while the Fujifilm records me. And I have to say, there are a huge number of X-mount lenses from Fujifilm that I absolutely love. My concern with it is a lot of those aren't optimized for video recording. We're starting to see some inroads with things like the new 18-120 f4 with the servo motor built into it, but they make a lot of wonderful primes, and plenty of those are going to give you either very stuttery autofocus, or the manual focus ring doesn't work great for focus pulling. Compare that to Panasonic, where, yeah, they had some very early lenses like the 20mm f1.7 that weren't great for video, but since then, pretty much everything they've brought out has been excellent for video autofocus, and on top of that, there's a lot of Olympus and OM system lenses that are also very good, like the 8-25 f4, which is a fantastic video lens. Now, it's worth pointing out that both of these have mirrorless lens mounts, which make them extremely adaptable, but we're largely going to be comparing native lenses, and in that case, I just have to give the win to the Panasonic here. We're back on Panasonic to tally things up. And looking at the categories that each won, it's actually very, very close. Fujifilm has won 5 categories, Panasonic has won 4, so obviously the Fujifilm is the best choice, and that's the one that you should get. It's not totally that simple. If you are someone who does a ton of slow motion recording and you need the absolute reliability of the built-in fan, then the Panasonic might be the better choice for you. I certainly prefer working with it over the Fujifilm, but despite Panasonic having some really smart technology like the DR boost mode to increase dynamic range, the larger sensor of the Fujifilm just pays real dividends when it comes to image quality, and Fujifilm has been making real progress in terms of improving their video autofocus. The battery life is great, and there's just a ton of record formats. So for a lot of people too, I think the X-H2S is going to be the smarter buy, but hopefully this video has helped you narrow down which might be the best one for you. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Don't worry, our better coiffed host will be back next week for more DPReview TV, so you're definitely going to want to subscribe so you can check that out. Down there's all the like social media thingy-doos that we do, and you should follow us on those as well. This has been a terrible outro, so hopefully we'll do better next time when we see you on more DPReview TV. Oh.